Hey YouTube, what's up? So, I know I posted that I would be putting this video out yesterday, but as you can probably tell from my voice, it was pretty hard for me to talk for long periods of time yesterday because I've been coughing up both my lungs with allergy problems. So I'm sorry for that. So that's why this video is a day late, and I apologize for that. So a lot of people have emailed or messaged me or in some other way said, "Hey, they wanted to know what my update on Dragods was going to be because when I posted my original Dragod deck profile, it was technically out of date because the new stuff had just been dropped. I think like 3 days after the deck profile that I posted. Um, Reason for that is I just hadn't gotten around to ordering the stuff, and now that I finally have all of it, and after a very long time of messing with the deck and the ratios, I finally have the build that I like. First off, one thing that I want to do real quick is I want to give a quick shout out to, I think I've mentioned this guy at least a couple of times on my channel, and I'm going to mention him again. Um, no, I do not want to sign into my Microsoft account. Go away. Um, One person I want to mention real quick is someone that I've purchased from eBay pretty much any time that I need Bushiroad product. I've gone through a guy named Louis Lim. That's Louislim, all one word. On eBay, he's been incredibly fair to me, and he's really cool. I've sent him lists before, and by lists I mean 20 to as many as 50 cards, and said, "This is what I need. What can you do?" And he'll take 3 or 4 days, and then he'll get back to me and say, "Hey, I got all of it. Here's what I can do." And he's very fair with his pricing. The only downside here, I know a lot of people don't like shipping from outside of the United States. He is stationed in Singapore. Now, for me, I live in Oregon now, right on the west coast, so it usually gets into Los Angeles or San Francisco and then ships straight up to me. Um, Now, when I lived in Oklahoma, this was a little bit more of a problem because I'd have to wait probably 2 weeks till I got my stuff. Now, I get it on average 9 to 12 days, somewhere in there. This one took a little bit longer, just because, for whatever reason, but it was still less than 2 weeks, I believe. I think it was like 13 days, maybe a little more than that. I honestly don't remember, but it wasn't forever. And it's definitely worth waiting a couple extra days or even a week at times if I'm saving possibly, a lot of money. So I would definitely recommend that if you're looking for cards, go check him out on eBay. He has a huge selection from all types of card games. I think he does every major Bushiroad card game. So that is your Vanguard, your Buddyfight, your Weiss Schwartz, you name it. He has a 99% rating, or a positive rating last time I checked. Um, I cannot recommend this guy enough. So please, if you do need some product, check him out for me. This is not something he asked for. This is just something I'm doing out of the kindness of my heart because he's always been so good to me, so I wanted to return the favor. So anyway, let's jump straight into this. So, like I said, this is an updated version of Dragods. This is the Dragon World version. I don't know if I'll be bringing you the Katna World or the Magic World version. That'll be something down the road, or if that is something you guys would like to see, I would consider it. So let me know if you would like to see Magic or Katna World. So, obviously, if you know anything about this deck, the buddy has got to be Deity Gargantua Dragon for a lot of reasons. Now, real quickly, should have had this out. I apologize. So, this is what we started with. This is the original Gargantua Dragon, and then he evolved into this. So, let's talk about the differences. Okay, we lost our double attack ability, but in exchange for losing double attack, we gained the move ability, we gained the penetrate ability, we became 10,000 power, and we got an extra critical. The extra 1,000 points in defense doesn't really amount to much. But anytime that you lose the double attack ability, and in exchange you get either move or penetrate, it is worth the the loss of the double attack, in my opinion. If you give up double attack and you get both move and penetrate, that is really amazing. Because this now can you can use Garga in any type of format, whether it's a center-based heavy format where people are playing cards like Max Dragons and things like that to put in the center to protect themselves. Things with full boards like Link Dragons and Galaxy Dragons or the Stargazer Dragons. I don't know what they're called. The Galaxy Dragons, you know what I mean. The ones that have to form the triangles on the board to gain their ability. So it's Cross's deck. This guy can just work around pretty much anything, and the ability to be able to focus in either kind of a format is really, really good. So, you know what? I'll gladly lose double attack. So, first, real quick, let's just go over his abilities. First off, his call cost is still very cheap for something so powerful. It's only 1 gauge, and then you put the top card of your deck into his soul. So sorry. And his main ability is, if you use, you may use this card with all flags, and if it is your buddy monster, then you may use Dragod monsters from all other worlds. So, he has the ability to let you use every other form of Dragod with the Dragon World flag, which is absolutely amazing. So, as I said, his call cost, pay 1 gauge and put the top card of the deck into the soul. First ability, Counteract. During your turn, you may call this card from the soul of a Dragod by paying its call cost. So what that means is if you evolve this into another form of Gargantua Dragon, or Garga as we'll just call it for simplification, you may pay a gauge and call him out of the soul and have another monster to attack with instantly, which is really good. Now keep in mind the ability to call him from the soul is not once per turn. That's something a lot of people forget. That's pretty stupid, the fact that you can call him out of the soul multiple times in a turn. His other skill, DG Evo, at the end of the battle of this card, draw a card and then call up to 1 Dragod monster from your hand on top of this card without paying its call cost. DG Evo activates only once per turn, and DG Evo is treated as G Evo. So, what all that means, the only difference between G Evo and DG Evo is DG Evo allows you to draw a card at the end of the battle involving this card. So, you attack, battle is resolved, draw a card, then you can G Evo. You can G Evo as much as you can possibly continue G Evoing in 1 turn, but you can only use the DG Evo ability once. So, make sure you get that straight. It sounds like a lot to take in, but I promise it's really not that hard once you play with the deck a little bit. And then he also, as I said, he has the move ability, the penetrate ability, and soul guard. So, before we go any further, I will warn you, some people always ask me, like, how cost heavy is this deck? This deck is on the pricier side of the format. This card floats around 30 by itself. Now, the way that Lewis helped me out, he sold me the secret sets, the secret pack that this guy came in. And I got the secret packs for, I think it was 17 apiece. The only downside to that is, you know, I get all these extra copies of the other Dragod monsters that I'll possibly never use, but it gets you around having to pay the $30 cost that this guy usually commands. So, if you are going to build this deck, you know, there are probably budget-friendly versions of the deck, but if you want to build this deck at full power, it is going to cost you a little more than your average deck. But in return, you'll have one of the best decks that are current in the format. I put this deck right up there with Max Dragons and Dimension Dragons. I think those 3 right now are the top. Link Dragon and Galaxy Dragons are definitely in that discussion too. But Dragods is definitely one of the top decks in the format right now. So now, going into the monsters. We obviously are playing our 4 copies of Deity Gargantua Dragon. We want to see this as soon as possible, so we do play cards to search him out, add him back to our hand from the drop zone, and make him easily accessible on our first turn. The first form that we're going to look at is Gargantua Dragon's Sonic Mode. Now, Gargantua Sonic Mode was one of the very first forms that came out alongside with Rampage Mode, or Tempest Mode, or the one that swung for 4 crit. But Sonic Mode is very important because the ability to transfer into him on your opponent's turn and activate his G-Evo ability to gain 2 life and draw 2 cards on your opponent's turn is absolutely phenomenal. He has the move ability, he has the counterattack ability, and he has the Soul Guard ability. And the ability to G-Evo into him when he's even in the drop zone with a card that you'll see later on puts him at 15k defense, and that makes him pretty hard to get over for most decks. Most decks will have to link attack that. So Sonic Mode is kind of like a resource engine that's allowing you to draw, gain life. Most decks, for the Dragon World variants, you see him on average 2 to 4. 2, you don't see him enough. I want to at least see 1 Sonic Mode in my hand during every game, so I play 3. And if you see a second one, you can always gauge it away, and it's an easy gauge out. Certain matchups, it's an easy side out, so I play 3. So one of the best forms of Garga is definitely this one, Galaxy Braver Gargantua Quasar, the Star Dragon World version of Garga. So he is a size 2 monster with 10,000 power, 3 crits, and 7k defense. He has a call cost of pay 3 gauge and put the top card of your deck into the soul. But keep in mind, anytime you G-Evo into any form of Garga, you do not pay that cost. This is only if you call him regularly. So when this card enters the field by G-Evo, you look at the top 4 cards of your deck, and you put one of them from the 4 you look at into your hand, and then you put the rest on the top of your deck in any order. Counter ability, Act. During your attack phase, drop the top card of your deck. If it is a monster, put it into your hand, and for this turn, this card gets Penetrate and Triple Attack. You may only use this ability once per turn. He also has Move and Soul Guard. Now, the reason this card is so good, he is effectively a +2 if you can get his effect. You G-Evo into him, you look at the top 4 cards of your deck, you select 1 card that you want to put into your hand, and then you put a monster on top of the 3 remaining. You then reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a monster, it goes immediately to your hand, and you gain triple attack with 3 crits and penetrate. So, really, really good. And he has 10,000 attack and 7k defense, you know, so he is definitely one of the best Garga forms, so. And the last Garga form that we play multiple copies of is, he's starting to become my favorite, actually, and that is Combat Deity Great Hero Dragon Gargantua Kaiser. This is the Legend World Garga. He has 10,000 power, 2 crits, and 6k defense, and he has a bitchin' outfit. His call cost is pay 3 gauge and put the top card of your deck into the soul. All items on your field cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, is his first ability, which is really good because this protects your both the swords that we play in this deck. They can't be destroyed, which isn't always something nice to have. And then its other ability is when this card enters the field, equip up to 1 item from your deck by paying its equip cost, shuffle your deck. Then, if it entered by G-Evo for this turn, this and that card get plus 30,000 power and plus 2 crit. So, what this essentially does, say you don't have an item. You G-Evo into this, you can search your deck out for your item and immediately equip it, even if it's in the battle phase. Then your item and your Garga will gain 30,000 power and plus 2 critical. Now, 30,000 power, that is going to get over everything that you come across. That is enough to get over max dragons, hence why you play this at 2. You can really this can swing over all their forms and cause them a big problem. So Gargantua Kaiser is definitely one Garga that you should invest in. Fair warning, this is one of the pricier ones because he is a promo. So he runs you anywhere from 10 to 12 a pop, but he is definitely worth it because this is your best weapon against Max Dragons. Now we go to the forms of Garga where we just have one copy. First one is we have one copy of Gargantua Dragon Raging Mode. So, Raging Mode is a size 2 monster with 12,000 power, 2 crits, and 6k defense. Call cost of 3 gauge, and you put the top card of your deck into the soul. When this card enters the field by G-Evo for this turn, it gets quadruple attack. So that means 4 attacks. If you have 3 or more different Dragods in your drop zone, this card gets +1 critical. Then, if you have 5 or more, your opponent cannot counter during the battle that this card is attacking alone. So, just for clarification here, all of this means is if you can get 5 different versions of Garga in your drop zone, your opponent cannot cast counter cards in response to this card when he is attacking alone. So if you have 5, you're obviously going to have at least 3, so his crit goes from 2 to 3. This thing also has Penetrate. So, with 12,000 power, 3 crits, and it can't be countered, this is going to be swinging for 12 damage by itself. So, that's 12 damage that your opponent is going to have to eat. They cannot cast counter in response to anything this card does if it swings by itself. So, you might be asking why play only one copy of this card. Space is one of those reasons. 2 is, if this card hits your drop zone, you have ways of adding it back to your hand and G-Evoing it through the drop zone. I don't see the point in playing multiple versions of this card. Yes, it is an amazing card. I could see playing 2 of it, maybe. But when I have cards that let me add it back to my hand, or G-Evo it from the drop zone, and as much as you draw in this deck, you're going to find it almost every game. So I don't see the point of playing multiple. And plus, keep in mind, this is probably the most broken version of Garga, but you may win solely just off, say, Galaxy or Kaiser. There are more than one win condition for this deck, so there's no reason to play more than one of this. Now, if you want to play more than one version of this, more than one copy of Raging Mode, that's not necessarily bad if it works for you, but that's just my stance on it. So, then we play one copy of Gargantua Thunder Deity Wind Demon Dragon. This is one of the 2 Katana World Gargas. So he has a cost of 2 gauge, and then the other part is put a card from your drop zone into his soul. Excuse me, guys. Now, the reason this is good, say you don't have base form in your hand, okay? But he's in your drop zone. You can call this and take this and place it in the soul, and then after you're done with him, you can call into him. That's why having Gargas that let you add a card from your drop zone into the soul is a very good thing, because you can use them to fall back on if you do not draw into Deity Gargantua Dragon or a way to search it. So, size 2 with 6,000 power, 2 crits, and 6k defense. First ability, if this card has a soul with G-Evo, all monsters on your field gain 5,000 power. That's really nice. Second ability, at the end of the battle that this unit attacked, put up to 1 card from the top of your deck face down on the field as a Dragod, size 0, 6,000 power, 6,000 defense, and 2 critical monster. This guy has triple attack and soul guard. So, attack, get a clone token, attack, attack, get another clone token, attack, attack, get another clone token. So this guy essentially facilitates 6 attacks, all with 2 crit, lots of damage output. Very good, and it's another world. So, very, very underrated card. 1 copy of Fickle Dragon of Black Flames Gargantua Phantom. This is the Darkness Dragon World form of Garga. Size 2 with 9,000 power, 3 crits, and 6,000 defense. Call cost. Put a card from the drop zone into the soul and pay 2 gauge. So, same cost as Wind Demon. He has the ability Shadow Dive, which means he can attack your opponent even if they have a monster in the center, which is very nice. And then his other ability is, when this card enters the field, destroy a card on your opponent's field. If it entered by G-Evo, destroy all cards on your opponent's field and deal 1 damage to your opponent for each card destroyed instead. So this can actually end the game. If you can get this in your drop zone and your opponent starts building their board, G-Evo into this from your hand or the drop zone, bam, blow up their field, 1, 2, 3, you lose. And so, only 1. He is a good tech. As is the Magic World version of Garga, the new version of him. Size 2, 7,000 power, 2 crits, 5k defense. Gargantua Blade Mage Neo. So, call cost of 3 gauge and put the top card of your deck into the soul. So a little high cost, but his other abilities are really good. This card's ability on the field cannot be nullified by your opponent's card effects. That is awesome. So your opponent cannot nullify any of this guy's abilities. Reason being why that's so good is his other ability. When this card enters the field, return a card from your opponent's field into their hand. If it entered by G-Evo, however, return all cards on your opponent's field, and you gain 1 life for each card returned instead. So, if you time this properly and they enter their battle phase, you G-Evo into this, you bounce their entire field, you gain life for everything that's bounced, and since they're in their battle phase, they can't normal call anymore. So, you can essentially freeze them. Very, very good card. Again, a good solid one of. And then 1 copy of Gargantua Dragon Gatling Mode. This one is probably the one that divides most players. I've seen some people play 2 to 3, and I've seen some people play only 1. Me, I only like 1. Same reasons kind of apply to all of these forms, actually. Space, they're all good. But very effective card. Very effective card. And there is an FTK centered around this card. I don't believe in relying on that. However, I have been able to get it off before. It's not something I would bank on. Not something I would consider building the deck around. But it is there in case you pull it off. But this card is phenomenal for a lot of reasons. First off, size 2 with 7,000 power, 3 crits, and 7k defense. He has a call cost of 2 gauge, and then you put the top card of your deck into the soul. When this card attacks, choose and use one of the following 3 effects. Deal 1 damage to your opponent, destroy a card on your opponent's field, or drop one of your opponent's gauge. If this card has a soul with G-Evo, however, choose and use 3 times instead. So what that means... If you have a card in his soul with G-Evo and he swings, you can activate any of those 3 effects 3 times. You can deal 3 damage to your opponent, steal 3 of their gauge, blow up 3 cards, do 1 of each, 2 of one, 1 of the other. Excuse me, guys. What I like doing, if you can get him on board, and you're trying to swing for game, if you have him on board with this guy, which we'll cover in a second, you're swinging at your opponent for 3, you burn them for 3, and then you have the rest of your attacks and possibly another G-Evo, so he can deal out 6 damage in 1 attack. That's really, really good. I will show you the FTK with him really quick. The idea is... You start with base form. You enter your battle phase. You G-Evo into him with Gargantuous Switch mode. You attack for 3. You burn for 3. You somehow increase your gauge to 2, and then you play the impact to deal 5 damage on the first turn. So, like I said, it's there if you can pull it off. It's not something I would bank on, but that's the FTK. So, now for the other monsters, we only play 2. 4 of them. One of them is Aegir Gardra. Size 1 monster with 5,000 power, 1 crit, and 1k defense. This card is like a... For you people who also played Yu-Gi-Oh!, this is basically a Stratos, and it's a very, very good card. When this card enters the field, you may drop a hand card. If you do, put up to 1 Deity Gargantua Dragon or Deity Dragon Tribe item from your deck into your hand and shuffle your deck. So, say you don't open up with base form Garga, you can use him to search Garga out, or if you want your item, you can search it out. His other ability, when a Dragod on your field attacks alone, it attacks your opponent and all of their monsters instead. So what this means, you have Garga on the field, or any form of Garga. When Garga attacks, he attacks possibly all 3 monsters on their field, plus the fighter themselves. So he's conducting 4 attacks for 1. So if they want to protect themselves, they're going to have to decide where they're protecting. This is very, very good. It basically turns Gargantua Dragon into Ozzy Dahaka. So I don't think I have to explain why that is amazing. And I still play 2 copies of Garcat. This is a possible cut for something else. He's mainly in here just to speed up acceleration, and I really like Garcat. 5,000 power, 1 crit, 1k defense. When he enters the field, if you have another DDT on the field, gauge and draw. So, that's all he does. And he's cute. For items, we only play 3. We play 2 copies of Combat Deity Dragonfang Sword Garsaber. 6,000 power, 2 crits. 1 gauge cost to equip. Has an ability counter. Counteract, so you have to use it on your turn. G-Evo. Choose a Dragod monster on your field and pay 1 gauge. If you do, call a Dragod monster from your hand on top of the chosen card without paying its call cost. Then you may put this card from the field into the soul of the monster called. You may only use this ability once per turn. So, having this in play basically gives you a Gargantua Switch mode that you can use once per turn. So, pretty nice card. And then we play 1 copy of Deity Dragon Sword Garcrease. 5,000 power, 2 crits. Equip cost is 1 gauge and paying 1 life. Its ability is, if you have a Dragod monster on your field, this card and all Dragods on your field get plus 4,000 power. They cannot be destroyed, and their abilities cannot be nullified by your opponent's card effects. Now, the reason that we play this, there's a lot of decks out there that want to blow up your field and nullify your things. This prevents that. So, you can use your searchers to fetch whatever item you need. So, having 1 copy of this is good. Now for spells. Only 3 copies of Gargantua Switch mode. Gargantua Switch mode, pay 1 gauge, call 1 Dragod monster from your hand on top of a Dragod monster on your field without paying its call cost. This... I am sorry, guys. This card is very useful for so many reasons. What makes Dragod so powerful? I'm on this form of Garga. You attack him. If I switch into any other form, since your target's no longer there, your attack whiffs and does nothing, and you wasted your attack. This is essentially a negate, a counter. It's so many things in one. Now, the reason we only play 3 copies of Gargantua Switch mode is we're now playing also 3 copies of Radiant Combat Deity Glory. This is basically a gargantuan switch mode that can be splashed into any deck, just like the new Garga. And the difference is this, you pay 1 gauge to G-Evo from the drop zone, and the monster that you G-Evo into gets plus 5,000 of power and plus 5,000 defense. So, you have essentially 3 ways to G-Evo from your hand and 3 ways to G-Evo from your drop zone. You are going to see both of these cards at least once every game, if not multiple times. It is one of the easiest ways to counter decks that when they're trying to take out your Garga, you can instantly switch into another form and stop their strategy dead in their tracks. I do not see the point of maxing out on both of these because having multiples of these in your hand can be bad. So 3/3 is a healthy number for me. Some people only play 2 switch mode and play 4 of this. It's pretty much whatever you want. I have 4 of each, but 3/3 is where I like it. 4 copies of Fighting Emperor Dragon Shield. This is the best card that came out of the Gargantua Dragon World deck. Box thing. You may only cast this card during an attack on your opponent's turn, and if you have a DDT on the field. Counter, nullify the attack. Then, if you have a Dragod on your field, put the top 2 cards of your deck into the gauge, and you gain 2 life. So, multiple reasons why this card is better than all the other Dragon Shields we have access to at the moment. Green Dragon Shield, your center must be open, and it only gives you 1 life. Blue Dragon Shield only gives you 1 gauge, and your center has to be open. This card, it doesn't matter where the monster is. Your monster can be in the center, and you can still cast this. And you gain 2 gauge and 2 life for using it. So you're basically getting 2 blue Dragon Shields and 2 green Dragon Shields for the cost of 1 card, while you can also have that monster protecting you in the center. So, another thing a lot of people don't know, say you have Garga, this form, base form, and you cast this to protect him. At the end of that battle, since Garga was still technically in battle, you can draw a card. A lot of people don't know that, so be aware of that. 3 copies of Dragod Shine. Dragod Shine is another wonderful card that we have access to ever since the first set of Garga, but it is definitely still one of the best cards that can be splashed in this deck. Cast cost, pay 1 life. That is actually just right there. That is an amazing cost because we have so much gauge costing. So it's nice to have access to an amazing card where we don't have to pay using our gauge. So you pay 1 life, and then you get to choose and use one of the following 2 effects. You may only cast Dragod Shine once per turn. You can either, 1, put up to 1 DDT item from your deck into your hand and then shuffle it, so you can use this to search out your item. And the other ability is put up to 2 DDT tribe monsters with different card names from the drop zone into your hand. So this is the way that you can use to fetch any of your Gargas from your drop zone and put them back into your hand. So very, very, very good card. Very important you run this at 3. This card did get reprinted as a common, so it is more cost efficient now. So 3 copies of Gar Highland. Gar Highland is an amazing card that we got access to in Golden Garga. Cast cost is put a DDT from your field into the drop zone. Counter, choose and use one of the following 2. You may only cast this once per turn. You get to either put the top 4 cards of your deck into the gauge, or you gain 4 life. So this card you can use to cast when your opponent is casting a impact. Reason being, most impacts say you cannot reduce the cost, and you cannot reduce the damage the impact is causing you, and you cannot nullify it. but you can gain more life. So you can use this to keep yourself alive in certain situations, or you can use this to gain more gauge to continue your plays. So this is definitely a good 3 to 4. Remember when I told you I was considering cutting Garcat? This was the card that possibly might get extended to 4, because this card is absolutely phenomenal. 2 copies of Gar Oracle. This is the other card. If I cut Garcat, I would put in a 3rd Gar Oracle and a 4th Gar Highland. Gar Oracle is basically Pot of Greed. You pay 1 gauge to draw 2 cards, but then if you also have a Dragod on your field, you gain 2 life. So this card is just more drawing, more deck thinning, more life gain, so very good card. This also got printed as a common for people who are on a budget, so be on the look for that. 2 copies of Dragod Var. This card is absolutely phenomenal. It is a counter spell, and it's one of the best counter spells in the format right now. Cast cost: drop a soul from a card on your field and pay a gauge. Counter: choose and use one of the following 2. Choose a monster on your opponent's field, drop all souls from that card, and then destroy it. Or destroy a card on your opponent's field. If you do, draw a card. This card has the ability to wipe out a monster with multiple souls in one shot. It empties their soul, then destroys them. Very good card. Or you can use it to just destroy 1 card while drawing 2, so it essentially replaces itself, so you're not minusing. Very good card. This is one of the best counter spells in the format. I definitely, even if you're not playing Dragods, I definitely recommend this card. And then we play 2 copies of the generic spell Recovery Veil. If you remember the last video I posted where we talked about decks in the format that I hated, you'll remember me talking about Garpunks, and eventually there would be a Godpunks. There would be a card that one day came out that was just a giant fuck you to Godpunks. Well, that's what Recovery Veil is, because I hate that deck. A lot of people hate that deck. So, Bushiroad said, here, have a fuck you. So, what this card does is has the ability, if your hand cards would be dropped by your opponent's card effects, you may reveal this card in your hand and pay 1 life. If you do, your hand cards cannot be dropped by card effects. So if they start that shenanigans of like discard a card, discard a card, discard a card, you just show Recovery Veil, you pay a life, and go, fuck you. Just don't say that in tournament play, but you can think it. Counter speed, it also has choose and use one of the following 2. Put the top 2 cards of your deck into the gauge, or for this turn, the next damage you take by attacks is reduced to 0. So this card has multiple uses, and I can justify mainboarding it. If you run into Godpunks, mainboarding it is awesome. If not, it has other uses, so it's a very, very good card. This is one of the more pricier generic spells, so I definitely would recommend picking at least 3 of these up. And then lastly, we play 2 impacts. The first of which is 1 copy of Deity Gargantua Punisher. Just for the simple fact that this is Yuga's deck, so we're going to play the impact. So, very simple card, really. You may only cast this if your opponent's life is 5 or less. Neither you nor your opponent has monsters on the center, and you have a Dragod monster on your field. Pay 2 gauge, deal 5 damage to your opponent. This card cannot be nullified, and its damage cannot be reduced. Only 1. If you activate it, great. If not, oh well. The second impact is 1 copy of Gargantua Buster Break, and I love this card for so many reasons. You may only cast this card if you have a Dragod on your field. Very easy requirement. Cast cost: pay 3 gauge, you gain 3 life, and draw 3 cards. Then destroy all cards on your opponent's field and deal 3 damage to your opponent. Then end the final phase. So, for 3 gauge, you gain 3 life, you draw 3 cards, you blow up your opponent's field, and deal them 3 damage. That is so much plus for 3 gauge. Amazing card. I think it's definitely worth a spot as a one of. One thing also, please note, the attribute of this card. If you notice, you may not be able to with the camera, but if you look it up, you'll be able to tell this card is a Dragod archetype card. So it would count toward your raging form, your rage mode 5 count that you need to hit for its effect. Whew. And with that, guys, as you can probably tell by my voice, that is the end of the deck profile. I am so sorry that I sound like absolute shit, but I wanted to get this deck out for you guys who wanted to see it. It is a lot of fun to play. Oh, well, here. Real quickly, I'll show you what I'm siding at the moment. Just real quickly, I'm siding a 3rd copy of Gargantua Kaiser. I'm testing out 1 copy of the Ancient World Garga, just because it's good for defense. A 3rd copy of Dragod's Var. A 3rd copy of Recovery Veil. 2 copies of Buddy Block. 2 copies of Chest Break to deal with set spells. And 2 copies of Loyalty, just because it's an amazing sideboard card. So, as for sideboard, it's really whatever you feel your weakness is in. So, my sideboard is always changing, but there's that. So, but anyway, guys, I know this was a long video. I hope you enjoyed it. This is this deck required a lot of explanation and a lot of elaboration. So I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you appreciated it. If you have any further questions or comments, please put them down below. I respond to every comment I get. Hope you're all doing great. Remember, I will be in Texas in June, so if you are planning on going, feel free to come up and say hi, and maybe we can play a game or 2. So anyway, guys, hope you're doing awesome wherever you're at. Make sure you subscribe if you already haven't, and I'll see you next time.